Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I am Ethan, joined, as always, by Pete. What's up, Pete? How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Oh, man. I am still recovering from a very, very, very long showing of the latest Martin Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Is your bladder okay?
My bladder and my bum. I mean, it is a first world problem to be sitting in a luxury cinema, stuffing yourself with popcorn and water and cola and whatever else for a runtime of 3 hours, 26 minutes. What can we compare it to that we've seen recently that's kind of at the same length, right? Avatar, The Way of Water.
Avatar comes close. I can only think of other Martin Scorsese movies, right?
Yeah, Oppenheimer was a little bit long. I think that was
Oppenheimer was very long. That's true.
Yeah.
I've been watching these movies in territories which allow for intermissions. And you and I have been harping on this ad nauseum for 2 years now.
Yeah.
But I just think that this movie, for example, is the perfect excuse as to why they need to allow intermission.
Can you, because you wrote to me and said that a cinema in the US tried to have an intermission, and it was the studio that slapped them down and said, do not do that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So
what's the story of that?
So as you know, Killers of the Flower Moon, it's an Apple TV movie, but because it's a Martin Scorsese movie, they've done a cinematic release or a limited cinematic release. Mm-hmm. And 2 European cinemas, they sold tickets to Killers of the Flower Moon. Okay. And they advertised it as having an interval. It was one of the first times we've seen that in Europe, where they specifically said, when you buy a ticket to this movie, there is a 10-minute interval in the middle of the movie. And I believe they did this also in a couple of cinemas in the US.
Yeah.
And apparently, Apple and Martin Scorsese contacted those theaters and said that they've been violating their contract by splitting the film, and that the film had to be shown in one contiguous block with no breaks.
Why? I don't get it. What's their rationale? Is it some like, oh, this violates the artistic integrity of the film? Is it that?
I think that's the rationale that someone like Martin Scorsese would use. That, look, I have designed this movie. I have directed this movie. I have overseen the editing of this movie to be one contiguous film. So I can't allow another person to arbitrarily cut it in half. It could be a pivotal moment. It could not be. Who knows? My argument to that, by the way, is if I need to pee, I'm peeing. Martin Scorsese be damned.
I mean, I would understand if cinemas were manipulating this and saying, hey, you got to buy 2 tickets, or they were like showing like some advertisements, or if they were like really manipulating it, I would have a point. And I'm all for artistic integrity and so forth, but I have to say, I think it's pretty weak sauce. Scorsese, who's very well respected, I don't think that anyone really thinks that his film or his artistic work is being diluted. If for a brief 10 minutes, people are allowed to stretch their legs and buy popcorn.
I will counter that one more step further and say that if that's the case, why even bother releasing these movies on a streaming platform like he did with The Irishman on Netflix?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, people were pausing that movie to watch, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you somehow work with Netflix to create a system where you can't pause the movie.
And I would also say, and I just, there's things in life that I just cannot understand. Studios, which are driven not by artistic integrity, they are driven solely by profit. God bless them. They're driven solely by profit. It's okay. I cannot understand why they can't wrap their head around the fact the 10 minutes doesn't mean you just pause the film, nothing happens. Show previews for 10 minutes. Show advertisements for 10 minutes. Show something for 10 minutes and let people enjoy the film. The second half, it's good for the cinemas that can make more on concessions. But again, the studios can make bank. By those 10 minutes, they can sell the ad. Put a long trailer in there. Put a bunch of Coca-Cola advertisements in there. Do something you can make money. I don't understand why they don't see the economic rationale of this.
Yeah, so I think that the advertisement aspect is probably such that that revenue would theoretically belong to the cinema chain, not the studio. However, if the profit share is 50-50 or 60-40, negotiate it to 65-35 or 55-45.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, when you have a movie this long, the other problem is that you also decrease the amount of showings you can do in a day.
Yeah.
Instead of 4 times a day per screen, maybe you can only do 3 times a day on average.
Yeah.
And that does become a problem for both the studio and the cinema chain.
I would also argue 3 hours, 26 minutes, there's 0% chance my parents are going to go see this movie. They are old. There is no chance they're going to sit through a movie that long. Instead of buying 2 tickets, if they would stream it, you're basically losing a lot of revenue for the studio as well.
Well, and that's why in last week's episode, my recommendation was, hey, for a 3.5 hour long movie again, it's not 3.5 hours of action. It's a high drama, and you're going to tell us more about it. My recommendation was wait for it to hit Apple TV Plus. I can't in good conscience say that you should stop what you're doing and watch this in the cinema, knowing that I would probably enjoy it way more at home than I would in the cinema.
From firsthand experience, I will tell you, this is, as you know, Scorsese, which means it is dramatic. It's not Avatar, Way of Water. That is a movie that, yes, you should see on the big screen. There is a reason to see it in all its splendor, in a big screen, on IMAX, with Dolby surround sound, all of that. There's a good reason to suffer through 3.5 hours for that movie. For this movie, which is similar to Oppenheimer, it's a very nuanced, very well done, dramatic piece. There's really not a lot of benefit seeing it on a big screen. On to the movie itself.
Please, yeah.
I have to say, and we've talked about this at length, the current fall lineup of cinematic releases is a little bit light, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
We should have been watching Dune right about now, but a lot of this has been due to the writer's strike, to the actor's strike, all the other issues that we've talked about ad nauseum on prior episodes. For the longest time, it's been several weeks, you and I haven't seen anything in the cinemas. This came out, it caught me a little bit off guard. I went to go see it just because the names alone, they're big names, right? Scorsese is a big director. Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro. I mean, these are names that make you sit up and take notice. So I went to go see it. I have to say, I knew absolutely zero about this film, about the backstory, whether it was fiction, nonfiction. I knew that it was not a sci-fi. I knew that it was not action. I guess I knew something about there were murders on an Indian reservation, and I guess it was assuming that Leonardo DiCaprio was the detective or something. Let me tell you what I know about the backstory. This is based on a book. It's a nonfiction book, and it's about the Osage tribe of Native Americans. And historically, they apparently had land in the state of Kansas, and they were forcibly removed to a piece of land in the state of Oklahoma. Apparently, when they were relocated, everyone thought that this new piece of land that they had was totally worthless, right? They gave them a bad piece of land. Just so happens that this piece of land had a vast amount of oil underneath it. And when the oil was discovered, the Osage tribe then obviously had the rights to the revenue or the profit that came from, the oil as well. And at this time, then they became extraordinarily wealthy. One statistic I read was that per capita, they were the wealthiest group in the world at the time. But there were a lot of efforts to prevent them from realizing this wealth. A lot of Indians had what were called guardians over them that actually would act as like a parent and decide in their bank account what amount they could withdraw, what they could use it for. You could think of it as like a modern day Britney Spears type issue. So this movie picks up that Leonardo DiCaprio is back from war. His uncle is living in the city in Oklahoma with the Osage. He's really a gangster, but he's somehow kind of like a local fixer. The Osage trust him, and he has like some small businesses, but he's really kind of like a neighborhood gangster. So DiCaprio comes and he's like, hey, I'm just back from war. His uncle's like, hey, I basically own all these taxis in town. And DiCaprio becomes what is kind of like a glorified Uber driver. And as an Uber driver, he actually has kind of like a regular engagement from this one Native American lady. The actress is Lily Gladstone. Her character is Molly, and she's a single Native American Osage. She is the best part of this movie. She is absolute scene stealer, phenomenal. She is, of course, in real life, actually Native American. She's been in some other things. So she is the female lead. DiCaprio and De Niro are the male leads, playing kind of the uncle and the nephew. So De Niro is the neighborhood gangster, and he is manipulating DiCaprio from the very beginning. DiCaprio plays a very uncharismatic, a little bit stupid, a little bit easily manipulable character. So he's driving Molly around. De Niro says, hey, she's single. You're single. Maybe you should make a little bit of effort to flirt with her. She's got land rights. If you'd marry her, then, you'd be basically marrying someone pretty wealthy. And DiCaprio's like, wow, that's a good idea. So he starts flirting with her. This is kind of my first little issue with the film. There was a time when he was kind of like a heartthrob, and he's still definitely like an A-lister. But in this film, he doesn't really present himself at all as charismatic, handsome, anything like this. So the Molly character is kind of like gossiping with their friends one day, and they're like, hey, what's up with you and your Uber driver? And she says, literally, well, he's not very smart, but he seems to have a good heart. And wow, he's got these amazing blue eyes. So she just kind of falls for him right away. And he seems to genuinely kind of like her. But she's a very, very strong character. Really lovely character, I have to say. So they end up getting married. They have 2 children. And DiCaprio is, a very doting husband and father. He kind of is involved in some of his uncle's little schemes and stuff like that. But basically, he's just kind of living off his wife and, her revenue share from the land that she has. And then the plot thickens a little bit where De Niro kind of manipulates DiCaprio and says, look, Molly has 2 other sisters. Basically her land share is going to be divided by 3. If she didn't have any sisters, then you'd kind of have 3 times the wealth. De Niro's basically manipulating DiCaprio to go out and get some hitmen to knock off his wife's 2 sisters so that 100% of the estate then belongs to him and the family. And then you can kind of see where this goes on from there and there and there. So historically, apparently, the Osage were the target of a lot of killings and atrocities and violence and things like this. And this was just at the time, the precursor to the FBI. The lead investigator is played by Jesse Plemons. He's fantastic. So eventually he comes and, the government does do an investigation in terms of all these, killings. And of course, DiCaprio gives up his uncle. Both of them spend time in prison and so on and so forth. That's the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. That is 3 hours and 26 minutes. My sense is that, one, I think from a cinematic perspective, this rivals Oppenheimer. I'm sure when it comes time for the Academy Awards, these two will absolutely be sharing everything. They are both cinematically fantastic. Scorsese, he's always got some big money shots. Everything is a work of art to him. It is a fantastic movie, visually, aesthetically, and so forth. It's entertaining in the sense that it definitely keeps my attention throughout, but I've read a bunch of articles about it, and most of them seem to be gushing over this film. I feel like it's a little bit empty calories, and that a lot of people are praising it because of the subject matter, which is the atrocities committed against the Native Americans. I feel like there's a lot more praise than this movie actually deserves, because at its core, it's kind of a simple gangster story. And that Scorsese obviously he did Casino, he did Goodfellas, right? I mean, Gangs of New York, he's no stranger to this. If you would just kind of take out the Native Americans and substitute kind of Italians or a different group, if you replaced Oklahoma with Brooklyn or Las Vegas, you'd basically kind of have the same movie. It's very much kind of, I don't want to say small crime and petty crime, but it's definitely kind of like the neighborhood mafioso manipulating someone to acquire and maintain power. And it's all these different manipulations hey, if you do this, if you get rid of this guy, if you get rid of this family, if you do this, then I'll give you this. It's just kind of the same kind of small time stuff that we've seen in other places. And I have to say, I felt like there was a better story to be told about the entire situation. And I feel like at the end, we're supposed to feel very, very sympathetic to the Osage, which I do in terms of their plight, but I don't in terms of the story. I felt like Molly, who was a fantastic actress, her character, who was supposed to be so strong, just kind of succumbed to Leonardo's character and his blue eyes rather too easily. One of Molly's sisters was a very vulgar, violent, raging alcoholic who was horribly killed, but had a clear drinking habit that put her in with some bad company. She wasn't an innocent victim. She was really a heavy drinker and partier. Molly's other sister, she was married to a white dude. When one sister died, then the other sister went and married her other sister's husband. Does that make sense? I don't think I explained it right. There were two sisters.
Yeah.
One died, and the remaining sister went and married the same husband.
Got it. Okay.
I really wanted to feel a lot of sympathy. I wanted this to be so tragic and just emotionally, I wanted to feel something, but honestly, whether it was intentional or not, I kind of felt like Scorsese was making the Osage women a little bit weak and making the men kind of all alcoholics. They weren't really taking things seriously, and it didn't really strike the right note with me. And then the other kind of criticism I have is that DiCaprio, if you look at his history, he's kind of turning out a film every 2 years. Inception 2010, J. Edgar 2011, Django Unchained 2012, Gatsby 2013, Wolf of Wall Street 2013. That's a pretty good run. Revenant 2015, 2 years later. Once a Time in Hollywood 2019. Then he had Don't Look Up in 2021. And now we have this in 2023. But if you look at all of those films, apart from Wolf of Wall Street, he's always kind of played someone who's kind of tried to dumb down his star power, play the everyman, in some cases kind of the underdog, right? Don't Look Up, I think, is a good example of that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he was kind of struggling actor trying to, rekindle his old magic. And in this movie, again, he plays someone who's very, very uncharismatic, almost deliberately someone who is so easily manipulated, by his uncle, it's just hard to imagine DiCaprio kind of like in that role. And I felt like I wasn't really like buying the performance just because of like how simple he was, pretending to be and how easily he was manipulated by his uncle. So that's my roundabout way of saying I think that the movie is definitely going to be nominated for a lot of different category of awards. I think absolutely Lily Gladstone, who plays Molly, 100%, absolutely. She was fantastic. Best part of the film by far. Jesse Plemons was fantastic as well. De Niro gave his usual performance, and DiCaprio, definitely showed up, but I felt the story just left me a little bit wanting at the end.
Okay, so two questions. One, in terms of the story, I mean, if this is based on a true story, if it's based on a book, historical, I imagine a little bit dramatized or maybe very partially fictionalized, there's not much room for them to really change the story without making it a true fiction movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, what my understanding is that there wasn't necessarily a Robert De Niro character. There wasn't necessarily a Leonardo DiCaprio character. The overall issue with the Osage and the Bureau of Investigation absolutely came in to kind of like investigate the murders and the violence and things like this. And it happened around the time of the Tulsa riots as well. But I understand that this is just kind of like a fictionalized excerpt of one story that may have happened within an otherwise real historical event.
Right.
But I don't necessarily know that De Niro's character was or was not real, and the same with DiCaprio's character. But I believe they're saying like this is one of the things that happened within this community.
Got it.
I read that DiCaprio was originally supposed to be the Bureau of Investigation investigator who kind of came to see what was happening. And apparently Scorsese kind of felt like, oh, you know what? I'm not making this about the Osage. I'm making this about now the investigation. And then he changed it around a little bit, to make it focus more on the community itself.
In terms of De Niro, so De Niro, I think the last X number of years, whatever the actual number is, let's call it 10, let's call it 20. The De Niro I knew growing up was like this hardcore dramatic actor. He was a guy who carried a sense of weight or gravitas with him, right? In the recent past, he's been more of a comedy guy.
Meet the Fuckers, Bad Grandpa.
But before that, remember, he did Analyze This with Billy Crystal. And it was a shocker to see someone so known for being a gangster in movies to all of a sudden, this is not the guy who was Raging Bull or Taxi Driver to all of a sudden be doing these kinds of comedy movies. And I think in the last couple of years or in the last 2 decades or so, he's kind of, look, this is going to sound really bad, but I want to say he's kind of gone soft, which is to say, like his appeal has become much more PG than it is hard R. Is this like a return to form in the sense, like, do we feel like this is an R-rated movie or this is like not a comedy and, he's excelling in that? Because I miss that old De Niro.
Sometimes De Niro and DiCaprio are so recognizable. It's really hard, I find, to look at them as anything other than the characters they've already played. One of the reasons I thought that he excelled in Meet the Fockers, for example, sometimes those movies hit so well because they get away from the character that they're so ensconced with, right?
Yeah, I can
believe
that.
Then he went back. Remember, he had The Irishman about 3 years ago, which is another Scorsese movie, right?
Yeah.
That's his bread and butter. He's historically the best at it. But I also have to say, it's hard to watch this movie and not just see it's De Niro playing another De Niro character, instead of looking at it in the overall context of the movie itself. What I'm saying is sometimes you just become so famous and well known that you're actually taking away from the story because no one can kind of separate you as the human actor from the character that you're playing on the screen. And that's one of the things that I saw with DiCaprio. DiCaprio's a star, bona fide star. Wolf of Wall Street, he was a different character because he was vulgar and it was crazy and he's just playing like this drug-addled version of himself. When I see here, I felt like a guy who's like intentionally searching for the Academy Award. Like, hey, how can I make my teeth ugly? How can I make my hair ugly? How can I make my face ugly? How can I make people forget that I'm an A-lister and just be this, oh, he's such a great method actor. Look at how great he's playing this guy in the 1920s. I could not get past it for DiCaprio. I really, really could not. Okay. De Niro a little bit more because he played, again, that same kind of like little mafioso crime boss, which he's so good at, right? He plays that exceptionally well. Again, historically, probably better than anyone, but we've seen him in that role so many times that it's hard to kind of like separate him from this movie. Definitely this is going to be nominated and win a few Academy Awards, but I felt myself just a little bit wanting more from Scorsese, wanting more from the cast, because I think it's a movie that should have like just driven me to tears. It's absolutely heartbreaking when you read about, the real life events. I just didn't really come away with the level of emotion that I kind of thought I would after 3.5 hours. I've also read that there's some people who think that this movie is too long, and then, kind of like the film critics have pushed back and say, no, it has to be exactly this long. I think that's just bollocks. I think it's totally bollocks. I'm all for saying this should not be an 1.5-hour movie. It shouldn't be a 2-hour movie. It shouldn't be 2.5-hour movie. Make it 3 hours. There is absolutely 26 minutes of excessive cinematic porn. At one point, there was a forest fire, and there were just these dramatic scenes and the shadows of the dancing flames and everything like that. It was only made for cinematic purposes, but it didn't have any relationship to the story itself. It was just kind of an opportunity for the cinematographer to say, okay, well, let's do this great thing where the flames are kind of casting a shadow and we see them dancing, and then we'll kind of pair it with some music and it'll have like this really impressive emotional impact. I thought it was a little bit unnecessary. Movie definitely held my attention. If I'm giving it a rating, very clearly, wait for this at home. It's a good movie. You will like the movie. I think everybody should see this movie, but there's no real value in seeing it in a cinema. It's entirely too long to enjoy. There's really nothing visually that you need on the big screen. There's nothing from a sound perspective that you need on the big screen. I think that you can enjoy just as easily with a few people, sitting on your sofa at home.
Okay. So that's kind of what I figured, to be honest. I am desperate to watch this movie, but not desperate enough to sit in a cinema for 3.5 hours. And speaking of which, let's square this circle. I think that the reason this movie, at least isn't in my market, is because they were so steadfast about there not being an intermission.
Yeah.
And India, for example, is known for having intermissions. So.
Yeah. I don't think it damages the film. Let me ask you a question, Pete. Just shifting gears a little bit. DiCaprio is mid-40s. What's the future of DiCaprio? Don't Look Up was a very politically charged movie. Okay. That's 2021, 2 years ago. Again, 2 years early, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Revenant, 2015. I mean, that was his big, Academy Award film. Wolf of Wall Street, 2013. Gatsby. That's one every kind of 2 to 3 to 4 years. What do you think he's headed right now? If you compare him to Tom Cruise, and Cruise, I think, is a much bigger star. Cruise is very driven. He says, look, I'm all about Mission Impossible. I'm all about whatever else he's got. Like he had Maverick. Cruise seems like on a mission to give his fans what they want. Where's DiCaprio?
I push back on thinking that Cruise is the bigger star. I'm not saying that he isn't or that he is, but I think that they both fulfill two different genres. For one, you can't put a candle to Cruise as being the de facto action star. What action movie has DiCaprio done? I think DiCaprio stays in his lane as like this high drama actor. I actually think you go one step further and say that he is kind of like this king of biopics. There's so
The Aviator,
where he has been the biopic guy. Yes, Howard Hughes with The Aviator, to a limited extent, Killers of the Flower Moon and
Yeah. Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street.
J. Edgar.
J. Edgar. His next movie is supposedly another Martin Scorsese movie with Roosevelt. So I think that he's kind of cut his teeth on that, or on movies where he plays a character actor, where they're really dialed in on the man.
What do you think of someone who's just playing someone else? Let's just think about it before we answer. Think about some of the very good examples. Who is the guy who played Black Panther, who first played Jackie Robinson?
Chadwick Boseman.
Yes. Jamie Foxx played Ray Charles.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting probably about 10 of them. The dude who played Elvis.
Austin Butler.
Playing a famous character oftentimes leads to like a breakout role, and then you kind of get like more original stuff, right? You're really right about DiCaprio that he seems to like, I don't know if like is the right word, but he seems to do it often, that he takes a character and he likes to become that character. J. Edgar is a great example. Gatsby is a great example, right? Wolf of Wall Street is someone. The Aviator is someone, right? Blood Diamond.
Yeah, Blood Diamond. Catch Me If You Can, another biopic.
Catch Me If You Can, yeah. There is something about that. It also makes me wonder, like, where did we first see him? We first saw him in
So for me, it was What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
The Beach.
Also great movie. One of the best soundtracks ever made, but yes.
Yeah, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. He's in Shutter Island.
So that, for example, is the first time I saw he was going off script. I thought Shutter Island was brilliant because it wasn't like just a drama, but it was kind of like a creepy, scary movie as well.
Yeah.
That was the first time I thought I saw him go completely off script for him. And the second was actually Django, where he plays this super racist plantation owner.
There's no denying Scorsese likes working with him because he's exceptional.
Yeah.
He always hits his marks. He always gives a great performance. But like you said, he's a very different actor than Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise seems to be like, hey, I want to give my fans what they want. I'm here to entertain. I'm here to make people happy.
Absolutely.
And DiCaprio has gone kind of a different direction, even though their real life personas are actually totally opposite from what they play, right?
You know where I think I see him going? I think I see him doing like another decade or another, let's say at least 5 or 6 movies where he plays like this straight-laced high drama thing.
Yeah.
And then in a big effort to shake up his career, I see him doing either crazy action, similar to how we were all blown away when all of a sudden Nicolas Cage is doing Face Off or The Rock.
Yeah.
Or like De Niro, all of a sudden you see him doing like these family-friendly movies and comedies where he teams up with Jim Carrey or he teams up with Kevin Hart to do a very lighthearted romp.
Who's a bigger draw for you, DiCaprio or Cruise? Or is there a third right now? And I think it's Cruise. And I say it's Cruise because I feel like...
Yeah, for movies to watch in the cinema, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
DiCaprio's playing a character. It's always like, hey, there's a new movie about Elon Musk. DiCaprio is playing him, right?
Yeah.
Or it'll be someone else and DiCaprio plays him and you get a fantastic performance, but you don't get the same entertainment value as, whoa, we got to see that new Tom Cruise film. Did you check that out? That looks amazing, right?
Here's the way I would look at it is that if I have to choose one movie at the cinema and there's a Tom Cruise movie and a DiCaprio movie, you and I are both grabbing a bucket of popcorn and watching the Tom Cruise movie with the mindset that, you know what, if we don't get to see this DiCaprio movie in the cinema, no big deal. Yeah. We'll enjoy it equally when it hits streaming.
That's right.
But there's no way you and I are going to enjoy Top Gun 3 on streaming, relatively speaking, compared to watching it in the big screen.
Yeah. Apart from Cruise and DiCaprio, who's the next A-list male?
There's quite a few, right? Like you still have Tom Hanks, although he's maybe in the twilight of his career.
Yeah.
You've still got Matt Damon.
Yeah.
You've still got Bradley Cooper.
Yeah. Russell Crowe.
He's in his twilight as well. Brad Pitt.
Yeah. Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet, I think, is the one who they've been grooming
Yeah.
for like the next generation's Leonardo, in the sense that
Yeah.
he's not doing anything except like these high drama, a couple of fantasy-esque
Yeah.
movies, but he's always known for kind of making the movie excellent.
Somehow we've just lost that group, you know? If you look at like what movies have dominated, it's really been superhero movies
Yeah.
for so long. Okay, so that is my review, Killers of the Flower Moon. It's a wait for streaming, but absolutely should be done. I mean, the names attached to it are fantastic. Even the writer is Eric Roth. He always works with Scorsese. He's written Forrest Gump, Star is Born, Dune, House of Cards. I mean, the names attached to this film, they're really legendary. You have to take this movie seriously because of that, and I'm sure it's going to get not just Oscar attention, it's going to absolutely be nominated and win several awards. But I felt that I did not get the full potential of that movie. But I felt a little bit that way in Oppenheimer as well. And maybe that's because my expectations are too high. But none of those movies made me leave the cinema saying, that was an amazing story. You know,
Okay.
the old, I laughed, I cried, none of that applied. Cinematically, they were exceptional works of art.
Right.
But in terms of stories, and that's not how I want to feel when I see a movie like that.
Okay.
Pete, shout it out. Where can everyone contact us if they want to give us their feelings about Killers of the Flower Moon?
Yeah, if you guys actually did end up sitting through a bladder buster of a film in Killers of the Flower Moon, let us know what you think. Do you think you should have watched it with an intermission? Do you think it would have mattered if there were an intermission in this movie? Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. Email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Or as always, like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell so that you'll be the first to know when the next episode of the Films and Stuff Podcast drops.
That's right. Pete, thank you for your time today. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening to 1 hour of Films and Stuff as opposed to 3.5 hours of Killers of the Moon. Okay, everyone, thanks for your time. And Pete, we'll see you guys next week on Films and Stuff Podcast.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.